Ah, here we go again. Good evening, everybody. Welcome into the 31st. I know the number this week. The 31st episode of the From the Verified podcast. My name is Callum. I will be your host. Hope you're all doing as well as you can following last night's disaster. Those of you that that travelled up, I hope the year wrapped up nice and warm, because that was frigid, and a pretty woeful display, to be honest with you, for the second straight game. Good to see Robert, Stuart, Sam in the chat. I'll come to the point about Ramsey Robert. I'll come back to that. Yeah, just letting you all know, this is the last time that you'll see my face for a couple of weeks. I'm off to a friend's wedding. Those who are listening, it won't change you listening. I'll still be recording podcasts, and I'll just be doing it on like a little mic, and it will be sort of uploaded. That way there'll be no music or anything. It'll probably just be me speaking. So just so people are aware, if you don't see any live shows, I'm just away at a friend's wedding for a couple of weeks, and that'll be through Portsmouth. I might try and combine a couple. I'll keep people updated, but I'll try and combine a couple. I think so. I'm not having to do like 8 podcasts or something. Probably no match previews. Just match reviews. Right. Now I've done that. If you're on YouTube and haven't subscribed, please do. It massively helps me. And if you're listening to our podcast, make sure to follow. And if you're on Apple, especially if you give me a review, that would be wonderful. Right. Enough of the self promotion. Let's get into what was pretty dreadful last night. Overall thoughts. I was listening to Corley's pod with Louis this morning. I couldn't bear to listen to it last night, so I waited till this morning. It's a good podcast. It's well worth a listen. But they were saying basically that we look as if we need an international break, despite just coming out of one. And that is so incredibly true. I don't quite know why we look the way that we do. Part of it is just, I think, playing against better sides. I think that Stoke team is a good side. They have the best goalkeeper in the division. I think you could see that, even that I'm really having to make a great save. He looked, every bit a Premier League goalkeeper. I know it was at West Ham who had a deal done with him and then changed their minds and went with Hermansen from Leicester, I think it was. You can see why. If Stoke don't go up this year, he'll be a Premier League keeper or in the first division in Europe somewhere next year. And comparatively, our keeper had an absolute horror show. Combine that with 3 defenders who seem to have the trifecta. One is injured. Lloyd Jones looks injured. He doesn't look right. I don't know what to say other than that. He just doesn't look physically as dominant. He looks as if he's favouring one side, and he's constantly sort of charging out. We've got on defender in Gillespie, looks absolutely shattered, just tired, leggy. The second goal we watch, it's awful. And the third in Kane Ramsey, who really since that Millwall red card has been up and down, up and down, up and down. And at the end of the game was laughing and joking on the pitch whilst our manager is apologising to our fans. And we'll talk about that more later. But it wasn't a great look. So it wasn't a Bon or a Fraser or anything. That's, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't a great look. Midfield, Doc absolutely terrible. I think Tyrese Campbell out tackled him. He was that bad. He didn't touch the ball. He didn't show much leadership. Arms in the air, flailing, not really leading anyone. Coventry chasing shadows. I think part of that is, you can see the shirt behind me. I think part of that is that the guy in front of him was so poor. You know, strikers. Miles wasn't that bad, I don't think, and TC actually improved. I think second half. He's not a left wing back. He's not a striker either. I think that's pretty blatantly obvious. I know why Nathan Jones plays him there, but I've been defensive of TC. I like TC the player. I think there is a player in there, but I think he needs to come out the firing line a little bit. I do think the fan base likes to blame him for everything that goes wrong, and I think sometimes that's a bit silly. I heard was doing another show, whatever it was, and I heard someone making the point that if he was an academy kid, he wouldn't be being protected. I don't think that's true. I don't think he is being protected by fans. I think some of the stuff I hear is sort of slightly nonsensical or not paying attention to why he's playing. But and I can look at all 11 players on that pitch, and I can, did anyone have a good performance? You know what? I didn't even mention Luke Berry, who touched the ball about twice. It was unlucky actually not to score in the second half. It's a more difficult chance. A nice ball from TC. But it looks as if he was stretching, and then Sonny Carey, does Sonny Carey things, and was busy, but for an attacking midfielder, he doesn't have a killer pass on him, and I think that's a real problem. I don't think Harvey Nibbs has a killer pass on him, and I think that's costing us in terms of opportunities. There are players making runs and they're not receiving the ball, and we don't have a midfield set up to play runners through. If you watch Stoke, they were constantly overloading. It was constantly 2-on-1s. It was proper Mark Robbins football. The centre backs are big, massive lads. Won a lot of the physical duels. It was a tough day at the office. Let's have a look at a couple of the comments that have come in. I will come back to yours, Robert. Robert's talking about Kane. We will come back to that. Stuart, it's tough to take. We're dead and buried after 4 minutes, just looking for damage limitation for Saturday. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think Nathan said it himself. You let those two goals in. At that point, you're kind of looking at containment. The third one goes in, and it's game over. And I think Kaminsky knew that. He was on the ground with his head in his hands. And his gloves, I guess. But second half was all about containment. It would have been nice to get get a goal just to up our goal difference, which is now completely in the crapper. But it's you can't concede those goals. You just can't concede. You come out of a game you lost 5-1, right? You think the first thing the manager tells you is don't do anything stupid inside that first 20 minutes. It was the first goal, and again, it's Stuart as well saying Cam not a fault for the first goal. He is. There's an angle that comes from behind the goal. It was on the screen. Stoke. It's a ball that he just doesn't adjust. He's out of position because he's looking for a cross, and fair enough. That's what you're sort of taught. But he easily could have taken 2 or 3 steps and doesn't. I don't know if the wind caught it. And I may have been willing to kind of let him off a little bit, actually. It's a player that I like. Kaminsky will come to Man United in a second. But, he's a player that I like. I don't think he's been anywhere near as bad as some like to sort of say he has been, personally. But you've got to be able to take that extra step and get your arm up. He knew it himself. He knew it himself when he was in the goal. He was so he was sort of gesticulating, and he knew it. He knew it. In terms of that, and I'm only going to do this once because I'm not going to spend. I've got to come to the Chronicles after this, right? I'm not going to spend like 40 minutes of my life chatting about goalkeepers when the manager came out. The only time I've ever heard Nathan Jones criticize a goalkeeper was Eisted against Northampton, and I think that was less because he made a mistake and more because it was sort of. I think he sort of being disrespectful. He tried to turn. Inside turn in goal when you 1-0 up, and obviously it cost us and all the rest of it. Despite that criticism, I started the next week. Right, Nathan, he's not going to change it. Once he makes his choice, he's made his choice. Last season it was because of injuries. So the manager's not going to change it, and he's not. He didn't blame him last night. He said he probably should have done better. Fair enough. But that didn't sound like a manager that wants to make a change, and nor can you really when it's your highest paid player, right? You're in a bit of a bind, and in that sense, he's right. Bree should have done better to block the cross. I mean, Sam saying don't agree, of course, committee we dropped him done pretty decently before these games. Yes, the third should have better, and you'll know that personally. I mean, I don't really know what to say to people other than the Mannion is not the fix that I think a lot of people think he is. The problems yesterday are a lot more widespread. It was a goalkeeping horror show, but the issue is much bigger than that. The only sort of bright light I can think of is actually I thought Croy was all right when he came on. But I mean, a 37-year-old Stephen Nzonzi dominated midfield yesterday. Is he 37? Is he 38 now, Stephen Nzonzi? And he absolutely dominated that midfield, dictated tempo. He's a great player in his prime, don't get me wrong. But he's 37 or whatever he is, and he's completely marshalling our midfield four around the pitch. It's laying the ball off, playing lovely passes through, winning every header. That to me is a much bigger worry because I think it happened against Southampton as well. They absolutely dominated us in there, and I don't know if that's Doc being off, or whether it's Coventry being off, or whether it's Kerry being off, or I don't have that answer. I don't know if the manager has that answer personally. But was such a secure unit, both that midfield defense unit was so secure, for so long. Is it that teams have worked hard to play against us? I don't know if that's true. I know Stoke did do a little bit of what Southampton did and had sort of the striker come to the ball and then play it around the wings, and it worked a couple of times, especially when we made the baffling decision to put Gillespie at left back. But it's have teams figured us out a little bit? I think that's probably true. Have some of our players maybe that started well come back down to earth a little bit? That's probably true. Do we look tired? Yeah. Have we made that many rotations of the squad? No. I mean, if you're the owners and you've watched those two games, I don't know if they watch every game. I think I've heard that Brenner does watch every game, right? But if you've watched these games, you must be looking at that going, I need two fullbacks and a centre back, right? At minimum, right? And they've sort of already laid the groundwork for we're going to make, somewhat, 2 or 3 signings in January. I think it's pretty blatantly obvious that they've earmarked fullback. Especially, we'll see with Fukuda what's happening there. We'll see with James Bree what's happening there. But that left side, we need some cover. We need to make Amari Bella full-time centre back again. Because Gillespie is not working. It's not working at the moment. We need someone who can cover Lloyd Jones a little bit, someone big and combative. I'd look at if Sheffield United are sending Tyler Bindon back to Nottingham Forest. I'd be very interested to use one of the loan slots on that. I think that would make a lot of sense. I don't think he was great for Sheffield United, but he's a talented young centre back, and I think that that could have been useful. I think if Omar Richards hadn't been injured, it's a left wing back, he probably could have had a chat with Nottingham Forest about them wanting to shift him on. But he's injury prone at the moment, so that's not going to work. So I think January they're going to have to make some changes. It's what makes building for that first year in a new division so difficult, right? Is that you can either sign lots and lots of players, sort of, and see whether having lots and lots of players, whether you can find the sort of gems in that big sort of spend, or you can kind of do what we did, right? Which was sign players that we thought quality-wise could make the step up, but maybe didn't fit every position naturally, and maybe didn't have and maybe had bad injury records, right? Quite often Reece Burke would not be at Charlton Athletic if he was fit all the time, right? He'd be at Burnley or something, right? Be at Leeds, I don't know, something like that, right? Maybe wouldn't with his whole connections, but you know what I mean. You look at like the reason why Amari Bell probably wouldn't be here if it, but again, you can talk about Nathan and all the rest of it. I get that, but like when Nathan says these are championship players, they are, but they're championship players when they're fit. And the worry is that their injury histories weren't hidden, and we took a risk. But some of the players we signed for fees, and I'm not going to get into the goalkeeping thing. I think what people's expectations were completely out of whack with what we were actually buying in that particular position. But if we look at JRC, that's what was it 2.6 something like that, 1.6 something like that, right? If you believe the published figures. So the guy's played 100 championship games. I actually thought he looked a little bit better yesterday when he came on, to be fair to him. I think he gave us a tiny bit of sort of quality in that middle part of the pitch. He's a player that I think ultimately can come good. He not play 100 championship games. He's rusty. He hasn't played very many minutes, and that's the issue with doing that. I think Nathan realised he needs to get him some more game time. Especially if Cov and Doc are tired. Beyond that, you look at Nibs. Was that a great spend? Again, he's got a 4-year contract. So as a longer term thing, will he come good? I hope so, but he hasn't yet. Apter was great for a month, but can't play wing back anymore at the moment. Why? I don't know. But why was he signed to play wing back? Was it we thought we could change any player into a wing back? Is it because he's quick? Some questions about maybe spending as much as we did on Apter, especially if we were then going to go and loan a player that Nathan was always going to start when he got the opportunity to in Bree. And then you look at Oluwafe, right? And you go, he sees him as a super sub. That one's less, problematic. I think he sees him as a super sub. I thought he caused some issues yesterday, but there was a moment he's clear through in the box. Yeah, it's on a bad corner. It's a bad angle. Have a shot. Right? We don't shoot enough. This is something that was bothering me yesterday. There's a number of opportunities, but just have a hit. Right? If it goes into Rosette, it goes into Rosette. Who cares? Right? Just have a shot. Right? We're trying to do 100 passes into the back of the net, and I don't get it. We're not that great at passing the ball around the final third. Right? Have a hit. See what happens. Right? Even the best goalkeepers make mistakes. Even the best defenders, defenders deflect it. West Brom, right? Deflects it, puts it under the keeper, sort of makes an error, but deflects under him, and hey presto. But going to Coventry, the issue isn't that we don't score goals, and whether that is an issue. It's can we keep them out? If we're going to be dominated by 37-year-old Stephen Nzonzi in the middle of the pitch, what is Grimes going to do to us in there? That is the best defensive midfielder in the Championship. And he will absolutely kill us if we play the way that we have done these last 2 games. Right? It's a great strike partnership. Is Lloyd Jones fit enough to play? He's fit enough to play 3 games in a week. He doesn't look it. Does Kane Ramsey want to focus on football rather than nattering with his mate? Is Macaulay Gillespie, not tired enough? He looks absolutely shattered. Why? And I get it. He played 50 odd games last year, right? But why did he look so tired? He basically had 2 months off, 6 weeks off of the season, right? Like that's why. That's why I'm frustrated. Is James Bree hasn't looked the same since the goal breathy at Derby. I think someone said he hasn't looked. He started like a house on fire, and I think it's kind of regressed to the mean, right? But I just sort of watch that game, and as a the goalkeeper made mistakes, okay, right? But focusing on that, we can't change that. We can't change anything really. We're just fans, right? But what we do for what a Darren Bent photo behind me. What we do for him, right? A player that can take a game by the absolute scruff of the neck and will you to winning or winning a game of football or get the point or whatever it is. I think the characters are good in the squad, but we don't have that one Roy Keane style complete and utter sort of. I'm trying to think of a positive word for it. Like a proper sort of drill sergeant in there. We don't have one, and we're lacking that leadership. Stuart saying Ahadme, Nibs, Kelman, Oluwafe, Apter, JLC all bought for good money, all underwhelming. Ahadme is a bit different because he wasn't bought by, but it wouldn't have been bought by Chapel. But true. I still think Nibs can come good. I still think Kelman can come good. I think he got unlucky to get injured after he got that first goal. Quite often strikers score in bunches. I think that is unfortunate because that's the sort of run that I was banging on about for however many months, and I do think he's actually a good pressing forward. We've missed that. Although Afa, I think, is a super sub. I don't quite know why we spent that much money on a super sub. I think maybe we thought we can give him as an option by dropping off the left. I think Nathan likes having strikers that can play multiple positions. I think, but I think it sort of showed what he thought of all the strikers when Fofana was available, right? They went straight for it. Premier League money doesn't matter. Go get him, right? Having the striker play off the left wing and all the rest of it. But just, Godden's injury doesn't help you in terms of strikers, right? We've had a number of opportunities dropped in the 6-yard box. You just want a finisher in there, and I don't know outside of that if we have a finisher. And I think that's a concern. After I don't want to say he was underwhelming, I just don't think he fits the system. Right? I actually thought, the first month he was good. When he came back against Hull, I thought he was actually okay in that game. I thought he was pretty good. Dreadful against Southampton, don't get me wrong. Didn't have much time on the pitch yesterday, but I don't think he's a. I don't think he's an absolute waste of money. I just worry about him fitting the system, right? And I don't like the fact, whether this Linda Apter thing is very weird. I don't know if it's actually his mother or not. But the thing with Apter is come on, show a bit of, tell your mother to get off social media. Don't start posting that he wants to go if that is true. Show a bit of professional pride, like professionalism, please. That's absolutely nonsense. That drives me mad when that sort of stuff happens. JRC, I think, again, can come good. I think he should come good, but he's going to need to play games. And, I think we missed a trick in sort of getting him 15, 20 minutes in games. I don't think he's such a bad player that he can't give you 15 minutes when you're up a goal. Right? I do think that we need to be a little bit, I think Nathan himself sort of admitted that. Where the devil is Godden and Callum gone as they both are back on the grass now. Callum's supposedly not far away now. So he said Bell was days and said Callum was a bit further than that. So he would look, if you can read between the lines with Nathan. I'm probably looking at maybe Pompey for Callum. So we are going to start to get some players back. The really big issue is we're not getting Edwards back. He's made that pretty clear. And we're not getting Burke back. So we're not going to have a centre back that we can rotate. And we're playing a player a player in Bell that can play left wing back, but whose hamstrings can't play left wing back. We're going to have to play him at left wing back until January. So we have to hope he stays fit. We've also got multiple 3-game weeks in there. So that's and the Christmas period where you're playing with less days in between. And especially we've got 2 really, really important games against Portsmouth in that. Joseph saying change the system. We don't have the personnel. It's a really tricky one. It's a really tricky one because I get that. I do. I'm just not sure that one, he's going to do it. And 2, I don't think that. I don't think we necessarily even have the system to play that at the moment, Joseph. And the problem for that is because we don't have a left back. So when Bell comes back, you potentially play him the left back, but he can't really play left back in a 4. So he's a left wing back if he's going to play out there. So it's tricky because those are specialist positions. And watching Stoke yesterday, right? Chimadu, is it, on the right side, who's again looks like a absolutely sensational talent, right? Again, a player that if they don't get promoted, you have to think that's a Premier League player at right back there, right? Absolutely brilliant. I thought he absolutely had us on toast all night. Overlap, doubles, half space, all of it, just absolutely brilliant. But you look at a player, you look at those sorts of players and they're specialists, right? You can't just magic one. And that's why having 2 injury-prone left-backs, one of whom was playing centre-back for you, was such a huge risk. And I think it's a risk that, admittedly, they've admitted is backfired, right? If they're looking at left-wing backs. Who was meant to be playing left wing yesterday? TC was like, this really bothered me. I'm sure Larry's listening, who I go to games with. Absolute legend. Oh, so Joe's saying Chamadu is apparently linked to Crystal Palace. That does not surprise me. I assume Johansson must be linked to a Premier League side as well. This is the worry for Stoke. Although I say that, Stoke are owned by Denise Coates, who owns Bet365, so they're not desperate for cash. They just can't spend cash at the moment. So they're desperate for PSR to sort of open up the wallet books. But, she can... she's got a heck of a lot of money to spend. But yeah, that would not surprise me. That's a really Crystal Palace type sign. Isn't there right back at the moment? Isn't he on Man United's radar? I think. Is it Nunez? I think he's on United's radar, so that wouldn't shock me. So left wing, yeah, it was Kerry that was basically playing up front, but it was really hard to figure it all out. TC's not a left wing back, that didn't work. Kerry's not a left forward, that didn't work. Berry in behind, I don't think really touched the ball for most of the games, just passive. But that's kind of Luke Berry. I'm not criticising him for that. That's what he does, is he snakes into the box. He did it again. Right? He's actually been robbed from 2 goals by 2 good saves. Not 2 good saves. One was a good save by Okonkwo, and then yesterday he's missed it, not by much. Yeah, Nathan seems stubborn to change. I mean, Nathan won't change it. That's why. But if you're going to play a back 3 or a back 5, quote unquote, you need 6 centre backs, right? And you could say Bell can be one, and maybe Burke's half of one, right? But you need at least another centre back, right? Just to kind of just have the cover, and that's what we don't have at the moment. He's not going to throw Goff or Lakatuaba in that, Lakatabua, sorry, because they're not ready yet, right? And then Goff wasn't ready for Cambridge United, so we do have to be a little bit, we have to realise that we spent a lot of money, and the thing about spending money, if you don't spend it well, is that you then don't have the opportunity to spend it sometimes in places that you need, because we spent so much on strikers, right? Between Hadmay, Kelman, and Oluwafe, that's over £5 million, right? If you can believe the fees that are sort of reported, right? And you look at that and you go, we've not got £5 million worth of striker out of that, and that's money that should have been used to invest in other places, right? I still think that Nibs and Rankin Costello can come good. I still think Apter can be a good player. I just don't know if it's going to be in this system. So I'm saying not Charlton related, but something about both Sheffield clubs, ownerships are looking at combining the clubs. Yeah, that's gone down like a bucket of very cold sit. That's the most sort of American trying to get into English football thing I've seen. I used to live in the States. Over here, here's a lot of love for Americans, but that is a typical American billionaire behavior right there. Could you imagine if owners had come in and tried to combine this with Millwall and called it South East London FC or something? Right? God, the meltdown. My own meltdown would be would be pretty crazy. Although we don't have a left back, so when Alfie Doughty's fit, that's one player I would take from Millwall. Although he seems to spend a lot of time in the pub at the moment. Do you think over the next couple of weeks Charlton will be forced into the emergency loan market? I know Preston North then got Jamal Lewis in, not sure what qualifies as an emergency loan, what the criteria is. You can still sign free agents now. Jamal Lewis, that drove me mad. As soon as Josh Edwards got injured, we should have done that. And I banged on about that on this podcast many, many times. that was a really bad missed opportunity. Is there any? There's Joe Bennett, but he's 36, trying to play at left wing back. I think that's a bit of a, I don't think defensively is good enough. I think he's training with Portsmouth at the moment. I think they're going to have to go into the market in January. I think that's the only way they're going to be able to find some wing backs. So yes, you definitely did, and I will keep doing so because I think it was a mistake. Not because I think he's a great player. I think he's just a functional fullback, and at the moment we don't have one. I think with all this stuff, as we kind of hit the half an hour point, I don't want to be on here too long because I've got to go and do the other pod afterwards. But when I sort of part of me also thinks that like this week, if somebody had said we get 0 points out of these 3 games, it wouldn't have shocked me. Right? I wouldn't have been surprised. It's just the way that it's happened, right? Horror show defensively, 5-1, battering, goalkeeping horror show, and the defensive disaster class in the second game away at Stoke, where we looked completely out of sorts. And then you head to Coventry with your heads in your hands, your heads in, you've got low shoulders, you've got bad posture, and all the rest of it. But it's so tricky, But it'd be the most Charlton thing ever to go up there and win 1-0, wouldn't it? The most Nathan Jones thing ever as well to go up there and win 1-0. So, those of you that are travelling, don't go with no hope at all. But your hope is probably going to be about the same as when we went to Derby on that Tuesday night a couple of seasons ago. With we all thought, we'll just get back here and then we'll go home and so it's not impossible. It's not impossible, but it looks incredibly unlikely. I'm going to talk about Callum Ramsey in just a second. Sounds like I'm surprised we haven't looked at our academy for right now. Yes, they're still learning, but at least we would have players who know that role. The issue is the step up is so big. Right, you can, Fuller is sort of who they're playing in there when they're using the academy kids. I mean, the step up is so large. The only player I can think of is Kai Enslin, and it's because he's ambidextrous, so he can play both feet. And I think ultimately that could be a really, really useful player to have actually if he can develop into a a functional fullback. The fact that he's both footed actually be massively useful. So I'm really rooting for the kid. He's a really nice guy as well. Kai. Looking for a miracle, Robert. When I was talking about Coventry, yeah, it is. We are looking for a miracle. Right, let's just have a quick chat about Kane Ramsey. This is Robert's comment from earlier. Following your tweet after yesterday's game, I hope Ramsey was suitably admonished by Nathan Jones for laughing and joking at the end of the match. I want to be really clear here that I think that probably it was just that Kane Ramsey didn't show much discretion. It was not meant, I think, in the way that the Fraser and Bond thing was. I think that probably, I think it was Sorba Thomas who was talking to, and if I'm right, that's a player he's gone out through youth football with. So that, it looks like they're really good friends. I have no problem with players having friends. I have no problem with players, having, personal relationships or whatever, it's none of my business. But when your manager is over at the away end apologising to fans for a really poor performance in which you yourself weren't particularly great, I would just recommend that sometimes players show a little bit of tact. And I know Kane Ramsey's sort of personality is jokey and smiley, and it is who he is, and that's cool. And he seems like a really great guy. I don't think he is disrespectful to the football club. But it's the same thing I have with his sort of highlight videos that he puts out. And he doesn't put anything out when we don't win. And I just don't think that it's a particularly fantastic look. It's a little bit I just don't think it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. I'm almost certain it was Sorba Thomas now that I think about it. So but we give to have Thierry Small right now. Well, I don't know what Paul Hackenbottom has done to Thierry Small, although he still can't cross. So that's the thing. But yeah, just to have another option. Having met his dad I've met his dad at the Valley on a few occasions. I bet we're getting earful. Yeah, I think it's one of those where you kind of just get down the tunnel, right? You have a chat with your mate if it's your mate, but do it down the tunnel, right? They probably haven't seen each other in God knows how long. Like that's fine, right? But just get back to the dressing room, right, and do it. Don't outside the dressing room, whatever it is. Just don't do it when fans are watching and your manager's apologising. It's just doesn't show a heck of a lot of discretion. I think is the word that I would use. And it's just, I don't think it's toxic. I don't think the away end was actually particularly toxic yesterday. I think a lot of us realise those aren't the games that are going to decide whether we stay up or not. We've got Pompey twice in Oxford this month. Those are the three games you look at and go, look, if you get 9 points from those three, right, you're basically 5 wins away from staying up. Right, that's what you got to kind of look at it and go, yeah, over the course of 4 months, will we get 5 wins? I think so. Right, so 5 months, whatever it is. So, as I said, the aim here really is to stay above Oxford, stay above Portsmouth, and then try and stay above a couple of clubs behind you if you can. But we're not, we're 9. Are we still 10? We're still 10 points clear of the bottom 3. We're 9 points clear of it. We're still a long way away. The bottom of the championship is still really bad. Oxford Norwich drawing is very helpful. So we've actually got. Well, I was about to say that we've actually got Norwich away as well on Boxing Day, don't we? So you look at that and you go, look, if you can get points out of those 4 games. Right, 2 at home with Pompey and Oxford that feel pretty must win, just to kind of, Pompey because there's nothing a Charlton side in bad form likes more than seeing Portsmouth on the other side. and also because they're a good side. Murphy's a really good player. I think we're going to struggle again on the outside if Dell's not back and all the rest of it. But it's a beatable side. Look at Oxford. That's a game you should be winning. Although Rowett's football is a nightmare to play against. But again, if you can win the games you're supposed to win, we'll be fine. It's the problem here is that if you lose all three of these, and you look at that Pompey game and you go, if you don't win that, then all of a sudden it starts to turn. So you got to look at it and go, if we can beat Portsmouth, we should be okay, right? But you're putting a lot of pressure on that game. I think the other thing to look at Middlesbrough's record. They haven't won away except for against Sheffield Wednesday. We still have to go to Hillsborough as well. That probably will help. In terms of they are absolutely terrible because of the assets dripping and all the rest of it. So, there are games that are winnable in there. We welcome a lot of sides. Sheffield United aren't blowing setting the world on fire. They come down the valley. So, there are winnable games in that second half of the season. I don't think it's panic stations, but I think it very much is owners need to get their wallets out in January situation. I think they've already telegraphed that they're going to do that. So it was disappointing last night, and I'm as frustrated and annoyed and irritated as everybody else is. But I think there's a bigger picture, and I think that we need to be really careful not to kind of overstep into some of the overreactions that I've seen that have been, it's 2019, 2020 all over again. We're going down, we're going to go back. We're playing Wickham next year, just keep calm, all right? Calm a little bit. It is the 26th of November. We have owners that have said they're going to spend money in January. We've got a manager that's been here, done this many times over, right? With squads that are worse than this in more difficult championships. It's just sometimes you run into buzzsaws, right? And we sort of run into a buzzsaw, and we need to, it happens, right? We're going to have a bad patch. We might have two bad patches, but it's very much, it's just get to 50. It's the race to 50, and we're basically halfway there, right? So we're almost there. We're basically halfway there, and we're not halfway through the season. We're about a third of the way through. So that would be what I would say. I hope that's given some of you a little bit of calm, a little bit of hope. But yeah. So just as a thing, just before I go, obviously for those of you joining late, I am going up to a friend's wedding. So just for the next couple of weeks, you'll get post matches, but they'll be done by me via like a little mic on my phone. I've got like a little microphone, and I'll upload it. There probably won't be any music or anything. Not anyone's going to really miss that, but it'll just be me speaking. There won't be any live shows or any video or anything. So if you're not subscribed to the podcast, please do go and follow it there, and you'll get all my post-match thoughts. I will be watching the games because this football club is my life at times, and I question my own sanity. So if you guys could just go and do that, that would be great if you don't want to miss a show. And then for those of you listening, thank you very much. Thank you for all the support. I really appreciate it. If you're on the podcast listening, if you could just make sure you're following, and just if you can leave me a review, especially for an Apple podcast, that would be absolutely amazing. All right. Robert mentioning that Pompey beat Millwall. They did. I think they like to do that. They didn't do it actually last season, but they've done it before. Historically, they have a good record against Millwall. They're not a bad team. I don't think any team in the Championship is bad, quote unquote. They've all got good players in them. But I don't think Pompey are going to definitely be around that in that bottom third conversation. So that's what I mean. And the thing about Pompey is just very specifically the fact that it's Portsmouth, and the record we have against them. At home, it's a little bit less maybe convincing than away, but we play them twice a month. If you can win those, and you can QPR on a Friday night, I think in March as well at home, like there are winnable games coming. You might not win all of them. I don't expect us to, but you just need to get another eight wins. It's 27 points we need. So either 9 wins or 5 wins and however many draws. So we're not a million miles from where we need to be. And I don't think the positive start has been badly ruptured by 2 bad performances against 2 of the better teams in the division. Right, I'm going to call it there. I'm going to go and eat some food, and then I'll be on the Chronicles later for those of you that are watching on YouTube. And I will speak to you all soon from a hotel room somewhere. So thank you all again for the support. Have a good rest of your evening, and I'll see some of you in half an hour or so, and I'll talk to the rest of you. I'll try and get something out to you. It may actually be pretty early on Saturday for you guys, but I'll try and get something out to you this Saturday or Sunday as a post game. Probably only be 15-20 minutes. All right. Have a great one, everybody. See you soon. Thanks. Bye for now.